Following the reversal of the ban on fracking and the most significant budget in decades, with the largest tax cuts in 50 years, it's pretty clear that we've not just got a new Prime Minister and a new Chancellor, but a brand new government. It's almost like there's been a general election in which the public voted for change. It's now a race against time for Truss and Kwarteng, the bravest double act since the Wright brothers, the inventors of flight, for this bold plan to kick in and reap dividends. Let's hope their plane doesn't crash and burn. Not only is this the first Conservative government in years that looks and feels Conservative, it's the first government of any colour in as long as I can remember that actually believes in something. And that something is capitalism. It's always encouraging to have a policy that doesn't need a lot of explaining, a policy that is clear and unambiguous. The three words of "Get Brexit Done" swept the Tories to a landslide victory in 2019. Go for growth could do a similar job for Liz Truss in 2024 or earlier. Why should we always rely on the international bond markets and money printing to pay for our schools, our police and our hospitals? Why not pay for it out of national income? And that's what this push for growth is all about. This budget has been mischaracterised as trickle-down economics, an idea that dates back to the 80s and US President Ronald Reagan, in which you hand the wealthiest in society huge amounts of money and hope they'll spend it. Now, that's not what we witnessed yesterday. This is a push for growth on the supply side. In other words, to sow the seeds for the economy to grow and get bigger and stronger and to bear more fruit, to boost investment, the hiring of staff to achieve pay rises for workers and to put more money into the pockets of every Brit so that they can go shopping. Now, why is that important? Well, because love it or hate it, 60% of our economy is based on consumption, buying stuff. Now, Labour have condemned this budget, but I'll be honest, I'm very confused because they were so critical of Rishi Sunak, the then Chancellor, when he announced the rise in national insurance. They said at the time it was a tax on jobs and an attack on hardworking Brits, which would disproportionately hurt the poorest. Well, they were right then, but it's been reversed. So what's changed? Crikey, I do hope that politics are not at play here. And as is too often the case these days, this government's unapologetically capitalist plan has been mischaracterised by those who want to see Britain maintain and keep going its crack cocaine addiction to tax and spend. Many are in uproar about the banker's bonus cap being scrapped, even though it didn't make a blind bit of difference, as high flyers just received more income through payroll instead. And Alistair Heath, writing in The Telegraph today, rightly points out that the 45% higher rate of tax was more performative, more political than anything else, given the pathetic amount of money it actually brings in. 40% is a much better headline figure because it encourages wealthy people to come to this country, stay in this country, invest and spend their cash here and pay their taxes here as well. Thanks to yesterday's budget, Britain now stands as a global beacon for enterprise and aspiration. And I believe in time Britain will be a model for the 21st century economy. Low tax, independent, simplified, innovative and dynamic, and an economy in which it works to pay, not sitting around all day watching Loose Women and Countdown. Margaret Thatcher transformed our economy in the 80s with low taxes and union reform, something it took the likes of the French and the Germans decades to catch up with. Well, this is another great leap forward, and let me tell you that post-Brexit, EU nations will never be able to compete with attractive, investable, low-tax Britain. EU nations are rooted in social democratic ideology, which involves big tax and big state. Critics of yesterday's budget have also chosen to exaggerate the scale of change. Even with the welcome tax cuts yesterday, which put money back into ordinary people's wallets, taxation levels are still astonishingly high, as pointed out yesterday by former chief Brexit negotiator Lord Frost, referencing a chart by the economist Matthew Leach. He writes, this chart is an important corrective to some of today's hysteria on the left. Today has seen a very welcome change in direction on fiscal policy, but we still have the highest tax burden for at least 40 years. That is why we have to get back to growth. Or how about this explainer, which has been doing the rounds, which puts the level of tax paid into perspective? Take a look at this. It's very interesting. A person on £20,000 pays £2,856. A person on £200,000 pays £85,178. 30 times more tax on only 10 times more income. A person on £1 million pays, wait for it, £435,000 in tax. That's 152 times more tax on 50 times more salary. The rich pay more. But this is my favourite tweet. It's from a young person making her way in the world. Take a look at this. Unpopular opinion. 100k salary is not the wealth you think it is. After tax, your take-home monthly is £5,457. If you're a man with a family of 4, with a wife who is yet to go back to work, with a mortgage of £2,000, no one can tell me that family is rich based on that alone. Who wrote that this week? One of the panellists on tonight's show, the political commentator Lynn May. You'll be hearing from Lynn, Peter Edwards and Edwina Curry shortly. So this should be the first step in the transformation of Britain. There's also, by the way, a deliberate misunderstanding of how tax works and how much people on different incomes actually pay. So let me clarify. How about this corker from this guy? And it's quite something, right? It demonstrates that in the end, taxes are still very high, and it literally is not a situation like we're in Dubai. Now, something that happened in the capitalist revolution under Margaret Thatcher in the 80s, and to be fair, we continued in the late 90s and early noughties by Tony Blair, was to keep taxes low. Don't forget, old Gordon Brown was the toast of the City of London, the banker's hero, but his successor, Keir Starmer, will undo all of that. His deputy, Angela Rayner, has already tweeted that Labour will likely reverse these tax cuts. But what would she and Sir Keir say to this voter who speaks for many? According to online calculators, yesterday's budget puts an extra £1,300 a year in my pocket. I'm just an ordinary working bloke. So why would the party that claims to represent the working man object to that? So there you have it. Vote Labour and vote for higher taxes. There is a sweet spot in taxation where it's high enough to fulfil the needs of the country in terms of public services, but not too high as to be a disincentive for people to take their business and money elsewhere. Before yesterday, we were well north of that sweet spot, with the highest tax burden since the 40s. Wealthy people paying less tax is not a good look, I'll grant you that. It's a gift to Labour. But Truss and Kwarteng are looking at the bigger picture. They want to grow the economy at all costs, no matter how unpopular and unphotogenic the policies are to make that happen. We should be focused upon the outcome, a bigger, more productive economy, rather than the means to get there. Because if the economy grows, we all win. And yesterday's budget taps into the potential of Brexit, because rooted in what was announced yesterday is the principle of economic and political freedom, something impossible if we were still in the bloc. Money's too tight to mention, but if you keep raising taxes, the graph stays simply red. For too long, sluggish, unproductive Britain has been holding back the years. But now a new flame has been lit. To carry on in a spiral of high tax and low growth is taking the mick. For those talking Britain down and criticising this ambitious budget that will deliver for all, I couldn't give a hucknell. If we go for growth, we'll be top of the pops.